Hi, everybody. This is Lori, and I am the CEO and founder of Inclusivity, and we're all about kindness and justice. And this is our podcast, Inclusivi-TALKS. And today we are lucky enough to be interviewing Rodolfo. And Rodolfo is a wonderful songwriter and musician.
Singer, actor, probably predominantly. Although
Okay.
I am delving into some songwriting now. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So singer and actor, which I
Yeah.
want to hear about that because I don't even know that.
Sure. Yeah.
And the reason that we're interviewing Rodolfo is because we think he's wonderful. We love his music, but also about a year and a half or so ago, he participated in an organization or in an event that we were hosting around immigrants and being a more welcoming place called Kindness Without Borders. So I met him then, and he was fantastic, and he recently also performed on our online concert series. So I just wanted to get to know you better. So welcome.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Lori.
So Rodolfo, I'd just like to start with what's your last name? Because I just totally forgot it, which is why I didn't say
No
it.
problem. Nieto, Rodolfo Nieto.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so Rodolfo Nieto.
You got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to start by just saying, how did you start playing music? How did you get into that, interested?
Yeah. It's always been a lifelong love of mine. I was in bands when I was in middle school. I played trombone for a number of years. I was in the marching band. I played in the concert band, the jazz band, everything musical. Got into choir in high school. Went to college for music. Went to college for opera singing at the time, predominantly. And that led me into more of my singing acting work. And I left school in the mid 2000s. So since then, I've been pursuing more of the actor route. But lately, within the past 4 or 5 years now, I've been doing more. I picked up the guitar, and I've been doing some more of that, singing some more music, particularly Mexican and Latin American music, Mexican being a part of my heritage, which is what brought me to the festival that you mentioned earlier. And it's been a lifelong love of music. I still now, as I mentioned, I'm an actor and singer in town, so I do a lot of musical theater. I still do opera. I was out in France actually in January, just before the well, I'll keep this a little bit, the swears out of it. The poop hit the fan. How about that? But we were able to travel, my wife and I, because I had an opera gig in Paris, so that was a lot of fun too. So I still do that. I still do musical theater, and now I'm doing this singing for little concerts like the ones you provided, and trying to make some concerts of my own while we are all in quarantine.
So was your family a musical family?
We sang around the house when I was younger. We also attended church, so I sang very frequently with the choir there. My mother would tell a story that when I was a kid, I used to watch a lot of TV. No shame in that. But I would hear a lot of commercials and just pick up the jingles very, very quickly. And even before I hopped into the choir when I was a child in churches, I would generally pick up tunes very, very quickly and be able to harmonize and sing them since I was younger. We made music in the house. No one else in my family, though, is a musician, either by training, professionally in any way. My mother played clarinet when she was younger. My sisters also played instruments as well, but I'm the only one who kept it as a passion and a pursuit of a profession.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in a suburb of Chicago called Hickory Hills in Illinois, obviously, being where Chicago is. And it was about maybe a half an hour drive outside of the city southwest, which is there are a lot of big suburbs in that whole surrounding area of Chicago. But those are my stomping grounds.
And when you started playing, what instruments did you said you were in band and sort of everything?
Yep. Trombone was my main instrument for many, many years. I played that through college. When I went to Luther College down in Iowa for my undergrad and Northwestern University for my graduate school. But from 5th grade through college, I was playing trombone regularly. And even for a bit of time, I considered making that my primary pursuit. However, once I discovered drama, theater, musical theater in high school, and I got to be on the stage, that introduced a whole new passion that I found drew me, and I gravitated to that a bit more readily.
Opera. How did you choose that?
When I was in high school, I had some great mentors and teachers. Um, my choir teacher and my voice teacher are a couple, or a married couple, and they were big influences. They also were both Luther graduates, which is ultimately what helped me kind of find that school. But when I began singing by their encouragement, because when I was in high school, I had, besides having a musical ear, I probably had the lowest voice of the other students around me. So it was a easy for them to say, hey, why don't you try madrigals? Why don't you try choir? And I had friends who were in band and choir and also encouraged that too. My first voice teacher introduced me to the classical world of music. And again, I picked it up quickly and I really enjoyed it. And I jumped into the repertoire I was given, which was a range of classical and some musical theater. And when I went to college, Luther had an opera they would do every year. And so when I was a sophomore, I auditioned for a role and I got a role and I just enjoyed that work. And it was another outlet and opportunity. So I began pursuing that more steadily and regularly. And that became, for a number of years, my primary pursuit.
And where did you do that? Where were you
I,
doing
yeah, so after I finished schooling at Northwestern, I did a various, they call them young artist programs, like training programs. And I worked with Chicago Opera Theater, Opera Colorado, Cedar Rapids Opera Theater, Santa Barbara Opera. Am I missing any there? I can't think of any more at the moment. But then until I came to Minnesota, which was due to Minnesota Opera, they had an opportunity for me as well as a young artist around 2009 to 2011, which that encouraged me to move here for that opportunity. And then after that finished, I remained in the area and would go out and do gigs here and there, whether in the state, or I was fortunate to work with some groups in New York for a couple of years. And that was, again, my primary pursuit for a while, until I rediscovered musical theater for myself in this town, which there's so much musical theater. And I recognized that, oh, I've forgotten about that. And I love that too. I love that world. So I began doing more of that. And now that's taken over my primary work over at least the last 3 or 4 years.
There's a lot of musical theater in the Twin
Mhm.
Cities. It's such a great theater.
Absolutely,
town.
yeah.
Is there a theater that you particularly enjoy working for?
Oh God, yeah.
Put
I
you on the
love.
spot, but
Well, yeah, no, that's an easy answer for me. Although I love everyone I've worked with, and I really have high respect for every theater in town. One of my personal favorites is Theater Latte Da, for a number of reasons. They're based in Northeast Minneapolis, which is where I'm based as well. So they're only about 6 blocks from my home, and my wife and I would attend a lot of shows there. And the work that they were doing there before I even became involved working there myself was of such high quality musical theater. Um, and Peter Rothstein, the artistic director, I had worked with him when I was in Minnesota Opera. He directed one of the shows and I was a chorister. So finally, about 5 or 6 years after that, I would see him at the opera and I would talk to him again, and I would go see his shows and talk to him after the shows and talk about how impressed I was with their work and wanted to be more involved. And this was at a time when I was also working with this personal transition from opera into musical theater, particularly local theater, which I mean, that's a whole journey in and of itself. But I finally got into, I auditioned and I got into some opportunities. My first show with them was Man of La Mancha in 2017, which was unlike anything I had ever done before. Um, just the approach to the other actors, it was phenomenal. Um, and and then after that was All Is Calm, and then I started getting more and more roles with them, and just being able to have the opportunities of such high quality shows that I remember so fondly. And people that I meet on the street who have seen those shows often remember them as well. And when they see me, they recognize me from those shows, and it creates a broader conversation and a broader community just from that one theater alone. But there are a lot of other great theaters. Mixed Blood Theater gave me my start. Lyric Main Street. I'm getting the name wrong here. It's in Anoka. I did a show up there, and they were wonderful too. Everyone really is really trying to put on a good product and put on a good show and do great work here. So I really have high respect for everyone and what they do.
so do you have a favorite role that you've played?
Ugh. Yeah, yeah. Which one? Well, doing the last January through March, we did a little night music at Theater Latte Da, and I got to sing the role of Count Carl Magnus Malcolm, which is a role that I had wanted to do for a while. He's a braggart. He's adult. He's conceited. He was egotistical. It's not like me at all, and just a lot of fun to do. And the cast was phenomenal. Real professionals, real great people, well-known people in town too, that were a part of that. And everyone was wonderful. Um, Although I got to say, one of my favorites outside of the Twin Cities was the first opera that I had ever done as a speaking role, which was down in Des Moines. Des Moines Metro Opera did a production of Maria de Buenos Aires, which is a tango opera, or a tango operita, as Piazzolla called it. And it's amazing music, and there's a role that is a speaking role, and it's all in Spanish too. So as a speaking role, and the director, who was a colleague of mine from Minnesota Opera Times, he was the artistic director there, Octavio Cardenas, when I was a singer there. He was the director for this show, and he was saying, we need somebody who can act, who understands music, who can move on stage, and who can speak Spanish. I know the guy. And he called me up, we worked it out, and I did that, and it's one of my favorite roles ever, and I hope to do that show again, because it's just so trippy and cool. But yeah, that's one of my favorite ones too. Yeah,
that sounds really fun.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned a little bit, you said you have some Mexican heritage. What else is
my background?
Yeah.
Well, my wife and I did 23andMe, and pretty much it's 75% of the world. But more specifically, from my mother's side, I have Irish roots, Norwegian roots, and some of the Western European, Northern European roots. And my father's side, he's American by birth, but Mexican heritage. And through that side, you have the indigenous American side and the Spanish side and the North African side, and so a whole lot of bits of it. But the ones I most identify with directly are Mexican culture and the Irish and Norwegian. If somebody asks me, those are the three that I say. Okay. My background. Right. Yeah.
So you said that right now you're doing a bit of online concerts because of the pandemic and everybody's staying at home. What are before this happened, what were you working on? And then once this is over, what are you going to?
Well, once it's over, who knows? We have some ideas. Right before this all happened, we were about to open the opera La Boheme with Theater Latte Da. They were presenting this opera, and we did let me turn off my phone here. We did three previews. We did three previews, and that was on March 13th was a final preview. And already building up to that point, we were getting the news trickling in that Broadway had closed down, and things were getting worse and looking worse. And so they monitored it every day, and then made the decision the day, Friday the 13th of March, that they were going to postpone the opening of the show. Every theater in town was deciding to close at that point, or they were having that same conversation. So we still have yet to open that show. And the plan is right now, depending on how things go later on in the fall, we are hoping to open the show. And my plan is to go right back into the opera of La Boheme with Latte Da. And then some other projects we're looking into. We just got to wait and see. I mean, truly, we don't know. But that's probably the most ready, at-hand opportunity I have right out of the gate. Again, all dependent on how things get better.
Mm-hmm. Are there other theaters around the country or other places around the country that you'd really like to go and act or sing or perform?
Yeah, I mean, locally, I would love to find the right opportunity to work at the Guthrie. I think that'd be wonderful. But outside, Broadway would be, of course, wonderful and fun too. But I also want to look abroad. As I mentioned before, I did an opera in Paris in January. One of my colleagues there is a woman who was working a lot with Broadway, with musicals in New York and traveling with that around the country, but also talking about how they were doing more musicals in France. And I love the idea of going far beyond the borders that you thought were possible. So while New York has many, 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 many opportunities, East Coast many opportunities, we have great opportunities here, and I would love to do also more regionally here.
Mhm.
But why not look into Mexico? Why not look into Canada? Why not look into Europe and see what else they have going on too? So in terms of a specific theater, not necessarily, or a specific company, but any opportunities that call out to me and that just seem right and feel right, I want to go for them and try to see what happens.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you said you picked up guitar.
Yeah.
Any other
Yes.
instruments that you've sort of picked up along the way?
Along with doing the Mexican and broader Latin American music, I've also played around a bit with the güiro, like the metal. There are many different kinds of güiro. It's like the scraper instrument, and so I have a metal one, and I also have a wooden one downstairs that I've used in some concerts. So that one, there's a fun instrument that I started playing around with that a friend of mine has called the quijada, and the quijada is the jawbone of a donkey, and it's a real jawbone too, and it's a musical instrument similar to the scraping güiro sound, but you can also uh, hit it with the bottom of your hand. It gives a little bit of a rattle sound too, and you are playing on the teeth. And it's a beautiful instrument if you when you think respectfully about the animal that it came from, but then utilizing these remains in a very musical way, in a beautiful way. It's a fun instrument to play.
You have either of those instruments so you could show us?
I have the Wheater downstairs. I can go grab that really quick.
Yeah.
The Quijada I don't. Yeah, the Quijada I don't have,
Okay.
but you can find pictures of it online. Quijada, Quijada. But yeah, I'll go grab it and be right back. I'll show you.
I would love that.
And then the other one, this one. So this is a type of Guido. That's G-U with an umlaut, I-R-O, Guido. And you can find many different pictures. This one is played. I have a metal scraper in my hand here, and kind of have this
I
sound.
love that.
If you a lot of like Colombian and Dominican music, if you're doing merengue or cumbia or vallenato, they'll have this kind of a sound where they, yeah. So it just kind of scrapes, and you get a nice little rhythm from that.
What made you interested in finding these unusual instruments?
Well, they're not that unusual. They're not that unusual in the styles of music that we were playing. So really, it just came to we would find songs that I'm gonna come back closer to the microphone. We would find songs that we wanted to do or wanted to work on, and then realize, wait, we're missing a sound in there. What are we missing? Oh, we're missing this. Okay, let's get that one. So, which is why I always talk about doing Mexican and Latin American, because while we do the group that I work with, all of us have some level of Mexican heritage, and that's a lot of the music that we're drawn to. We also would do enjoy exploring outside of that as well, and so these instruments are just simply a part of what the music encompasses or entails or needs. Plus, it's fun. It's fun to learn new things.
So how did you start doing the Mexican and Latin American music? How did you get into that?
When what was it, 2016, I think. Earlier in the year, I wanted to do a recital. I had done a recital in 2014, classical recital, 2014, and I was looking to do another classical recital. It was another way to self-promote and make my own project and make my own opportunity. The singer I wanted to work with, the first singer I wanted to work with, she wasn't able to join me on it. She was finding herself too busy, and I was hoping to do a joint recital. So then I chatted with another friend of mine, Alejandro Magallon, who his wife is a dear friend of mine, and we met in college. And when they moved up here, we just got close again. And I spoke with him about, he's also a singer, classically trained opera singer, and he's from Mexico. With his mother is from Minnesota, though, so he also has that connection. It's very fun to find that out. And and I asked him if he would want to do a recital with me, and he's like, "Yeah, that sounds like fun." Well, and then we started talking more about, well, then why don't we look into some Mexican music as well? Usually when people think about classical music, they only think about Western European music and maybe American music. Um, there is a much there was a huge classic. Let me start again. There is a lot of classical music in Mexico from Mexico that we also wanted to look into. We started that delving, but then also got a little sidetracked by some of the more popular music or the indigenous music or the popular music influenced by indigenous music, and started playing around with those songs that were very familiar to a a Mexican audience. And so we ultimately decided to do a recital with music from Mexico entirely. Then we thought, well, if we're going to do that, we can't just do it with a piano. We need guitars because guitar is so instrumental to making that music. So he found three wonderful guitarists to accompany us on this music. We worked with them, and we put on this concert. The audience loved it, and we loved it too. So we decided in 2017 to do another concert, which we expanded a bit more. We had a violinist join us and a woman who was playing it's called a jarana, it's a different kind of guitar. We had two other guys. We had four instrumentalists total, and Alejandro and I singing. And we would make these concerts joint educational as well as entertaining. We would talk about the music. We would talk in English and in Spanish because we knew we had a multilingual audience. And the audience loved it, and we loved the work, and we felt that this kind of music and these kinds of concerts were doing great things for bringing communities together from different walks of life, economically as well as ethnically, or from nation of origin too. So that's really what started that going. And unfortunately, Alejandro and his family moved to Houston, although we are still in touch and trying to figure out things we can do. But I'm still working with two of the guys who are in town, Israel Aranda and Mauricio Sanchez, who were a part of this group, and trying to figure out ways to keep going and to make new music, to play more music, and just have fun and share it.
So I'm going to ask you a question that probably anyone who knows music knows the answer to. I love music and go to a lot of musical theater and a lot of performances, but don't have any background sort of training.
Mm-hmm.
What makes music classical? Like, what would be sort of the defining classical?
Yeah, that's funny. I was thinking about that question today because I feel it's a moniker we put onto a certain characteristic of music. I don't want to use the word quality because that assumes that something is better in some way. It's I'm gonna defer to Duke Ellington and say music is music. Good music. If it's good music, it's music. If it's bad music, it's not music. So it's just a different kind of music. It's a different approach to music. It's a different maybe intention, but that is, I think, either hard to answer or at least perhaps unfair to answer, because sometimes I don't know the difference. It takes different training, I think, but street musicians can play classical and classical musicians can't play street music.
Right.
And there's a whole world of music in between. So I think that personally for me, if someone approached with what they call classical music, I would approach it in a different manner than I would approach it if somebody just came up and said, hey, let's play Guantanamera, or let's play 100% Mexicano, because that becomes more of like a groove-based, jazz-based feel. But I would treat them both with the same respect of any music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great answer. I have become more interested in jazz and blues, and I'm always shocked by the fact that jazz and blues and rock and country, sometimes it's all sort of overlapping themes, overlapping tempos, overlapping. And so sometimes I'm really not sure what.
Yeah. I think it's whatever, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not almost, again, almost not worth dwelling on too much.
So besides music, what do you do? What do you love?
Uh, Currently or in general, even without the pandemic?
In general, and then with the pandemic, because you're
Sure,
right.
sure, sure. Well, truly socializing and having conversations with people like this, but also in person, I really enjoyed doing that for a while, or going out and dancing with my wife when we could. Um, and I found over the past year, though, I've been fortunate to have a lot of work, so I found myself in the theater a lot, and I love doing that kind of work. It's great, but otherwise, and even now within the pandemic, I love cooking. I love baking. I love making food. I love walking. I just love enjoying and taking my time now, which is great. Um, and now that I have the time, more language studies, more instrumental studies, more musical studies. Um, yeah, kind of like whatever I find is fun. Oh, and then playing. I got to mention this. Playing games as well. Playing games like tabletop games
Yeah.
and games like Dungeons and Dragons. Like I love that. D&D I think is great, and especially now in the quarantine, I've been playing a lot of it in my spare time. Or at least thinking about it a lot because it's fun, imaginative play that I play with friends on Zoom or any other tele video conferencing platform. So it's fun, and I plan to keep doing that too once we get out of the.
So do you like being the dungeon master? Do you like planning and being the leader?
I've only started out recently. I tried it one little campaign a couple weeks ago, and it was fun. I'd be happy to do it again. Right now, my wife is, as we speak, I believe she's downstairs working on her DMing campaign.
Excellent.
But we also have another game with the same people that we're playing as playable characters. So yeah, I just enjoy playing it in whatever way.
Yeah,
It's
my
fun.
my friend who plays said that he loves it, and being the dungeon master is just it's so time consuming to write it. So he said, I kind of love doing it, but I
Yeah.
want to put a lot into it because I want it to be a really good campaign.
Yeah, of course, yeah, and it's fun. It's there's no limit. I would always joke at every game. Somebody asks, "Well, can I do this?" I go, anything's possible. You can do anything. Um, and I think that's maybe another reason why I really enjoy doing it now, because there are so many more possibilities there in that imagination game than we can do in real life, in reality.
Yeah. So what do you cook? What do you like to cook?
Right now, I enjoy cooking whatever with whatever ingredients I have. But to be more specific, I refer a lot to the America's Test Kitchen book. They have
Okay.
a book that is like what was it? 11 seasons of cooking of their TV show and their recipes that are all just wonderful. Um, Easy to follow, and you can alter a couple of things here and there if you don't have the right ingredients. Because right now, my wife and I were both not leaving the house, so if I'm missing something, then I'm not going to get it.
Hmm.
Um, but for example, yesterday I made their recipe for chicken cantonese, which is an Italian braised chicken. We had some of the dried herbs they needed, but I also went into our backyard and picked up some creeping Charlie, which is the weed that most yards would have. It's an edible weed, and it kind of has a sage-like taste. So I used that in the recipe. So with I hate wasting food, so I'll make whatever I can with whatever I have at hand. But my wife, who is an herbalist and really understands plants and what's edible and what's medicinal and can help me identify things in our backyard, she will help me pick out violets, violet greens, or dandelion greens. Dandelion, everyone knows what dandelion looks like. But that, creeping Charlie, oxalis, all these little things that we can add to recipes or just make little salads or little bits with, and it's creative. It's fun and creative, and at the end of it, we get to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best thing about cooking.
It is the best thing
Yeah,
about cooking,
yeah,
but fun to try to find these. I mean, I think that the pandemic is difficult in so many ways, but I also think that people are kind of counting on their own creativity and really um, just learning things about themselves and
yeah.
about the.
Absolutely. I would never wish this period on anybody, and I always think about those who are direly affected, whether have been sick or know people who are sick or who have died from COVID-19. Um, that being said, personally, I have found, as you said, many things to discover in myself, mentally, physically, psychologically, things that that things that I've needed to work on for a long time, but I haven't done it yet, either because I've been too busy, or I've said I've been too busy, or I've been actually busy and involved in work, as many of us are, and didn't find the time or didn't make the time to do before. But now that I have the time, the little things that I have pushed away, I said, oh, I should look at that later on, or I need to think about that, are finally now coming to the surface and going, guess what? We're still here. All right, what do you want to do? Let's talk about it. And so I've been doing a lot more journaling and listening to some lectures and trying to follow some good advice about how to stay both proactive, but also looking internally and see what's going to help me thrive and succeed now and moving on once we get out of it.
I think it's wonderful for those of us who can do that. It's really wonderful. As you think about people who have lost loved ones and had significant effects from the pandemic, I also think about people who are on the line and can't stay home because they're working in the medical profession or in grocery stores or in anything else that we're counting on. So I feel like I think the one thing the pandemic has done, which I'm hoping we take a serious look at, is sort of bring up the divides in the country and the social constructs that we have that seriously affect us. So I'm hoping that we'll have a conversation about that when this is done.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think this is a good opening for that. I think there's a lot of things we can learn from this. So if you had to talk about sort of, besides just personal things that you do, what do you care passionately about? Like, what are your missions? What are your, so if you sort of said, here are the things I most believe in, what would those be?
Connections. I want people to connect. I want to help people connect. I love using art as a platform, as I mentioned about the concerts, of having different communities and different social groups coming together to enjoy, but also to talk and to listen to each other. That I think is one of the most important things for me, which is why I do a lot of language studies, which I try to implement whenever I can, to connect with people, and especially here in the United States, where we are only taught English. We're mainly taught English. If you want to study something else, it's an elective. We don't have a driving need. I'm sure somebody would argue at this point, but in general, I see that we don't have a driving need that pushes us to say you have to learn something else, whether it's Spanish, whether French, whether here Somali or Vietnamese or anything. That we have people who speak those languages, but we still drive English. So if I can connect with somebody else, even on a simple level of how can I help you find the thing that you're looking for, that gives to me a satisfaction that I cherish. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I want, and it takes good communication, which is good listening as well. Right now, I'm in a very comfortable position. I'm good. I'm healthy. I'm good financially. I'm good in my relationship with my wife. So I have the ability now, well, maybe not now as much, but even now, even being in quarantine, like this kind of communication, I have the ability to reach out to people and just say, hey, we're around, people are around. What's going on? And beginning those conversations and getting people to just open up, just to talk. We've been watching, a little side note here, my wife and I have been going through the entire seasons of Queer Eye, the new Queer Eye that came out, which I love that show. I think the Fab Five are really fabulous. But I'm always struck by watching people open up and watching people when their walls, either their beliefs or whatever's holding them back, just slowly broken away, and how they become lighter and just more open, and you see the transformation in their faces, you see the transformation in their body and their life, and they're really guided through it so wonderfully by the five men who helped them out. So that I find very inspiring, and that kind of life change simply by being present and helping people to be present. Which again, I love live theater, because when you're a live theater, ideally, you are present, you are there, you are engaged, and you're communicating, and you are sharing a moment and a space and an energy in a period of time.
And live music, live theater,
Yeah.
all the same thing.
And
So I would like you, if you're willing, to tell us a story from your life sometime. And what I always tell people is I'm not looking for the story. This doesn't have to be this is the big lesson I've learned. It can just be a story that when you think back over your life, something that pops up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kind of follows along with what I was saying about communicating and engaging and connecting with people. In 2012, my wife and I took a trip. We were only dating at the time, but we took a trip to Italy. It was my first time there. I think she had been there before that. Maybe not. Regardless, we went to Italy for a little over 2 weeks and rented a car and drove around. We had a great plan of checking out various towns, Florence and Siena and San Gimignano and a little town, Pievescola, and in which we went to a small town mushroom festival that it was all locals, only locals, and people were like, "No, why are you here? How did you find us?" The internet. The internet said you had a festival, a mushroom festival. We're going to attend it. Throughout the trip, we did our absolute best to communicate in Italian. I was studying a lot more Italian at the time. I was just getting out of a program that was focused on Italian opera style, and the language. So that was something I was focusing on at the time. So I took the lead in communicating as much as possible that way. We made it throughout the trip, we went to a lot of different places, as I mentioned, but we went to a town called Deruta, which is outside of Perugia. Look at a map. To anybody else, just look at a map and you can find it. But Deruta is a small town known for their pottery. They've been making pottery since the Roman times, so like for a long time. And almost every shop there makes some kind of pottery, some of their own style, but they also have specific styles of Deruta that have specific engravings on them, paintings on them. It's very colorful, very fun town. We were trying to find some stuff to take home, which we eventually did. But my wife and I went down to this one shop. There were a bunch of hand painted or hand drawn signs saying "Antico forno," like this way, ancient old oven this way, and follow the arrows. So we followed the arrows down. We looked around and came to this shop, lovely shop, where this very old man kind of shuffling around and walked up and "Buongiorno, salve," and "Benvenuto," and come in and look around the shop. He only spoke Italian, so I would chat with him, and things are just piled up on the floor, and you see the big old furnace or the oven in the back. So we walk through, and we can walk down into it and see it, and like, oh, this is wonderful, this is really great. And he showed us the different styles, and he's explained the different styles and the paintings on them. And I would ask him questions, and I would talk to Claire, my wife, and she would ask questions, and we were so fascinated. We loved everything he was showing us, and we were so interested. We talked to him for about 20 minutes or so, I think, just about his wares, and we decided, okay, we're going to buy a few things. We picked them out, and well, what do you recommend between this and this one, and it was great. I can only assume he was so tickled or happy to have two foreigners who were so enamored with his work that he looked at us like, venite qua, come with me. Walks in the back, into like the back room of the shop. And we walk back there, at least equal the size of the wares he had in front. He had it in the back, but it was his own private collection of rarer pottery, rarer dishes, or some unique little art pieces that are still all pottery based. And spent another 20 minutes or a half an hour just walking around, and he would show this, and we would take a picture. We'd ask him, can we take a picture? Yes, okay. So we take a picture or a video of us talking to him about it. We have it somewhere in our collection of files, a little video of me chatting with this man and taking a view around the shop. But the fact that he opened up his work, his home to us even further, something that we got the feeling was more sacred to him, to to open it up to strangers and say, you seem like people who will appreciate this.
Mhm.
So what do you think? You didn't even ask what we thought. Just here, look at it. Look at it. And that was one of the strongest memories I have about what can be gained by bringing a genuine sense of curiosity and interest into the things that people do. And I say people, not Italians, not workers, not anybody specific, but just people, regardless of what they do, whether it's, people at the farmer's market or somebody working at um, at Lund, who's stocking stuff, or pick your profession. If it's something that they enjoy and they have a passion about it, and you are somebody who shows a genuine interest in that passion, you can open up a very strong relationship, even if it's only a short, brief period of time, where two human beings can connect about the things that they love that's right in front of them. And I think that is just an important lesson for life. And I try to, anytime we travel or even around here, anytime I find opportunities to prod somebody into opening up more about something that they clearly love,
Yeah.
it's an opportunity I try to take.
I love that. I've even found that Uber drivers, I try to have conversations, or Lyft drivers, try to find out information, because people are fascinating and everybody has a story and everybody wants to be heard. So I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
That kind of segues into the next question, which I think is probably maybe even just a continuation of what you just said. But if you were giving someone one of two things, if you were giving a musician who was coming up a piece of advice, what would that be? And then the other question is, if you were just telling a human sort of here's my advice from having lived as long as I've lived right now, here's what I would say is my advice for you.
Yeah. For a musician, or I'll say anybody in the arts, find out what you're passionate about doing and do it, and be as specific as possible. It's one thing for me to say, like, I love singing. Great. What do you love to sing? Oh, I love to sing this style, this style, this style. Great. Like, which composers? Oh, okay. Well, then now this, and this, and this. Okay. How do you want to do it? What makes you smile? What excites you? So, being as specific as you can about finding your passion, and then finding a way to do it. I mean, that comes first, and then economics comes after that. It's always a consideration, but when you have the time to do your passion, and make it part of your life. As simple as that. That's what I try to do now every day in some capacity. It's always on my mind, always in the back of my mind, and trying to organize my life and how I can do that. And now, a general bit of wisdom for life: learn everything you can. And again, whatever interests you. If you don't know what interests you, try everything until you find something that does. But I do some work at Robbinsdale Middle School. I've done some musical theater, musical directing work. And so talking with those students, and I think about, I have nephews and we have godchildren, and there are children in our life who, if I ever ask them the question about, well, what interests you? I don't know. All right, well, then go find it. It's out there. Figure it out. But you gotta take that journey, that step out to find what genuinely interests you. Because even for me at almost 38 years old, I still find new things where I go, oh, I really love to do that. Or I go, I didn't realize I had always loved doing that. Why am I not doing that more? Takes me back to point number one. Find out what you're passionate about and figure out a way to do that.
Sort of a life lesson for everybody, whether you're an actor or just a person.
Just a person.
I like that.
Right. We're all just people. Just yeah.
So I would love it if you would be willing to play something for us as we're sort of, first of all, I would say thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure. I love hearing your music every time.
Oh, thank you.
And we'll look forward now to hearing you in some musical theater. I did not know that was something you did. So
yeah, wonderful.
I just love it. Minneapolis is such a wonderful place, and
it really is. Yeah,
I think taking advantage of the theater here is a pleasure.
Really, yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, I got my guitar here. Let me strum a few notes for you. Make sure that the sound is at least balanced enough to not be overblown or too loud for
Yeah, we don't want people to have to cover their ears.
Absolutely. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Great. So, as I said, I picked up the guitar, and I got an expression for you. My wife always says, "Don't put mayonnaise on things," which means don't put excuses on things before you do them to try to mitigate a disappointment. So, what I'm about to say is not meant to do that. I just wanted to say that right now in this quarantine time, people talk about, well, I guess now I can learn the guitar, or I can study this language, or I can study bread baking. Everyone wants to bake bread now, and I agree. It's a great time to do all that kind of stuff. The guitar, I picked it up 2 years ago because I just decided that I want to start doing this and incorporate it into my music. And since that point, even though I feel personally I have so much further to go, and I talk to friends of mine and try to get lessons in and keep studying, I still think, you know what? I'm not gonna wait until I feel like I'm ready. I always just try to pick it up and play it and make it a part of my music right now. So this song, this is one of the fun things I love to play. It's called a style of music called Wapango. This is a song called Cielo Rojo by David Caesar. I'm gonna whistle too. How does that come out? All right.
Sounds great.
Solo sin tu cariño voy caminando y no sé qué hacer. Y el cielo me contesta cuando pregunto por ti, mujer. No he podido olvidarte desde la noche en que te perdí. Sombra de duda y celos solo me envuelvan pensando en ti. Deja que yo te busque, si te encuentro, y si te encuentro vuelve otra vez. Olvida lo pasado, ya no te acuerdes de aquel ayer. Olvida lo pasado, ya no te acuerdes de aquel ayer. Mientras yo estoy dormido, sueña que vamos los dos muy juntos a un cielo azul. Pero cuando me despierto, el cielo es rojo, me faltas tú. Aunque yo sea culpable de aquella triste separación, vuelve por Dios tus ojos, vuelve a quererme, vuelve mi amor. Deja que yo te busque, si te encuentro, vuelve otra vez. Olvida lo pasado y ya no te acuerdes de aquel ayer. Olvida lo pasado ya no te acuerdes de aquel ayer.
Well, that was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Your whistling is terrific.
Thank
I
you.
have tried to learn to whistle and I'm just terrible. So I'm impressed.
It's one of those, again, you want to do it, just play around with it. I've been playing around with whistling for decades now. So yeah,
Okay.
it's fun incorporating it.
I only started a few years ago, so maybe I just need
yeah.
to keep at it for another 7 years.
Exactly. Take your time. Take your time.
So 2 more quick questions that I wanted to ask and just didn't do it. What languages are you said you're really sort of interested in languages in general. So are there any languages you're working on right now?
Oui, maintenant, j'étudie le français avec un professeur, une bonne classe, Coucou Français, qui s'appelle Coucou Français. A little class in Northeast Minneapolis called Coucou Français, run by a wonderful teacher from Bretagne, Maïwen, who my wife and I were taking lessons with her prior to going to France at the end of last year, and then a little bit before the shutdown here, but now we're doing it online. Now we do Zoom classes with her. So I'm studying that. I've gotten away from Italian for a little bit, but I do want to get back to that. And then, it's kind of, and I keep studying Spanish too. I grew up hearing it and learning some words, but I didn't grow up speaking it. So it really came later on in life when I just started applying myself more and, again, just going out there and doing it. Make the mistakes, get corrected, come back, study some more, do it again. So I've been studying those languages for a while now, and I put them on my, they're on my resume now. These are languages that I can speak because I can have a conversation in those languages. Yeah.
And are there other languages that you're thinking, boy, this would be sort of, sometime I'm doing this?
Yeah, I think Somali would be wonderful because we have such a Somali population here. And I've also listened to some Somali music, and it's really fascinating too. And I would love to play around with that. Arabic, I think like conversational Arabic. Some people have said like Moroccan Arabic. I don't know what the difference is now, but just day-to-day Arabic, I think would be a beautiful language and a useful language to work on as well. And then, there's so many. Yeah. If my wife and I decide to go to a country, I will spend time learning that. I will spend time learning. If we go to Japan, I will work on Japanese. If we go to Korea, same thing. If we go to Portugal or Brazil, then Portuguese or Brasileiro, I will look into that too. So yeah, whatever I can. Whatever I can. Yeah.
And then this is just again, you may not have a good answer for this, but you may be able to give somewhat of an answer. You said there's Mexican music and then there's a broader Latin music.
Yeah.
What defines, in some sense, the difference between the two?
I think one would have to go listen to the music from the country. I mean, there are different styles and there's different melodies. There's different influences. For example, there's an indigenous influence in Peruvian music that is different than the indigenous influence in Mexican music, or from Colombian music, or from music from Venezuela. Those are often different African elements. If you look at Cuban music and Dominican music, they just depending on the diaspora of peoples from around the world, as well as indigenous people, and how each unique region and country evolved their own way of communicating, then that's where the music comes from. So it really just goes to, you got to hear it for yourself. Find the singers who are from there, who have been doing that, who did that for their entire life, or who focused on that, and you start to hear the subtle little differences in each place's music.
And it sounds like for you really try to focus on what is this music meant to sound like, what culturally, sort of, where does this music come from, and what are the okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will always try to get I always try to give respect to the sound that was intended, but I'm also not against retooling and playing with things. Sure. Like, for example, quickly, mariachi is a music that at least everyone's heard the word mariachi, even if they don't know exactly what mariachi is, but it's the general catch-all for Mexican music, which is not the case at all. But there are songs that are attributed to mariachi music that I will still play as a soloist or as a duo, that is taken out of that context because it's still fun and accessible in a smaller way. And I personally, I'm fine doing that. I just make sure to say, this is not a mariachi representation. I am not a mariachi. That's not how it works. But here's the music. If it's good music, it's good music. Again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah.
This has been a tremendous pleasure, and
You're very welcome.
I'm looking forward to hearing much more from you as time goes on.
Great.
And I hope that you continue cooking and playing and enjoying this time in your house, and then going out into the world and spreading your incredible message of connectedness and music and joy.
No,
So
thank you.
For that.
You're welcome, Lori. Thank you for having me again. It's been wonderful chatting with you and great to see you. And I hope you stay well and healthy during this time as well. And maybe I'll get to a new, better normal as soon as it's appropriate.
I think that's exactly what we'll do.
Yeah.
Thanks
Good.
a lot.
Good.
Right,
You're
thanks.
welcome. Have a great day.